What would our diocese be like? What would our congregation be like if we weren't saddled by this legacy of slavery? If we weren't saddled by institutional racism?
A particular fellow, he said, you know, my family had slaves. And you know, with our church being a predominantly African-American church, many of our ancestors were slaves.
And so we organized ourselves around actions that would identify racism, those that would disrupt it, and those that would help dismantle systems that generate that are focused on white supremacy.
The topics that we were covering were very intense, and I felt a lot of sadness.
Como inmigrante, puedo compartir que vemos cómo hay esas diferencias todavía en nuestra sociedad.
Actually, I thought that it distinguished itself from some of the other anti-racism programs because it was so based so faith-based. So I say this should be done in the whole diocese.
My name is Marcus Richardson. I'm a member of St. Thomas Episcopal Church.
Linda Hale, parishioner at Christ Episcopal Church.
Ann Smith, deacon postulant, doing field training at Christ Church, Waukegan.
Mi nombre es Everaldo Miguel Briones, diácono en la Iglesia de San Marcos en Glen Ellen.
I am Mike Underhill, facilitator of the anti-racism team at St. John's Church in Chicago.
Rory Smith, St. Thomas Episcopal Church, senior warden, and a member of the Anti-Racism Commission. The Pathway to Reconciliation is a study guide that looks at the work that was done by the Task Force on the Legacy of Slavery. The final report of the Task Force on the Legacy of Slavery was called An Invitation to a Committed Journey. That committed journey is really what the Pathway to Reconciliation is about. The study guide takes us through that report, and that report calls on us to tell the truth, to look at our diocesan history, which they provided, much of the work, and then for all of us to look at our congregational histories, the histories that were associated with the legacy of slavery. And that means during that time, during periods of time where there was civil unrest, where there were demonstrations, with the whole civil rights movement, and even up to today. Where do our congregations fit along the spectrum? What work have we done? What have we not done? And then to tell the truth about it.
Well, in the last few years, about 10 folks from St. John's, lay and ordained, participated in the wonderful C-ROAR anti-racism training that's sponsored by the diocese. And 2 of us have also participated in the facilitator training for the Pathways to Reconciliation. This has been building up a critical mass of people at St. John's who are interested and dedicated to anti-racism work. Our rector, Cara, has been with us from the very beginning. We've had a joint effort. It's real important in this matter that it be both a lay and ordained clergy project working together.
During the Lenten season in 2018, the thing that really stands out for me was the fact that we had a timeline, big timeline. It was posted in our parish house, and we looked at the church's involvement with its people. And it was revealing again, because we had to think about it. Not only do we have to think about it, we had to talk about it. I believe that a lot of good came out of it, because we want to continue to have these kinds of conversations.
It was so faith-based. It was based in prayer. It was just grace-filled. It was clear to the participants that all of this had as an underpinning the baptismal covenant that we make. And I think that gave people courage, it gave people hope, and they kept hearing, this is God's work, don't be afraid.
El estudio del camino a la reconciliación es una oportunidad de aprendizaje para muchos de nosotros. Nos damos cuenta que en la historia estamos todos involucrados, principalmente en entender lo que ha pasado en esta nación. Entonces el camino a la reconciliación, el estudio del camino a la reconciliación nos permite entender en una forma más profunda como parte de esta sociedad y de las necesidades que existen y de las oportunidades que tenemos que tomar y del compromiso que tenemos que tomar para cambiar esto, cambiar esta parte de la historia.
We talked about some of the ways that our congregation had been quite a long time ago, and we compared that with the way the congregation is now and some of the things that have happened more recently. That was encouraging. I think we should do this again. I think that we should do this course in this group again.
Critical to the pathway to reconciliation is our baptismal covenant. And that's really the guiding principle. And so we spend a lot of time during this looking at Scripture and praying and finding a foundation in our faith that helps us through and allows us to think beyond what we could ever hope or imagine. And we know that with God, all things are possible. So the pathway to reconciliation is real, genuine. It's full of hope and possibility.